Welcome to our channel, where we bring you gripping stories that will leave you on the edge of your seat. In the shadows of wealth and power, one young woman silently endured a life of cruelty and humiliation. Aisha, the maid no one cared to notice, mistreated, overlooked, and treated like trash. But hidden beneath her humble exterior is a secret that will shock everyone. What happens when the truth finally comes out? A truth that will change everything. Who is Aisha really? And why has her true identity been kept in the shadows for so long? Betrayal, secrets, and redemption. As Aisha's past collides with her present, the world she once knew will never be the same. Get ready for a story of resilience, mystery, and the rise of a word. Today, we take you into the world of Aisha, man no one saw coming. Aisha sat by the dusty window, watching the cars zoom past the gates of the wealthy Adeyemi family home. From the servant quarters, the world outside seemed like a distant reality, one she could only dream of. She had been working as a maid for 5 years now, ever since she turned 18. Though she was young, her life had already been filled with hardships. Aisha's father had died under mysterious circumstances, and her mother had fallen ill, forcing her to take up work at the Adeyemi residence. Her work there was thankless. The Adeyemi household, led by Chief Adeyemi, a wealthy and influential businessman, treated her with disdain. Especially the madam of the house, Mrs. Funmi Adeyemi, who never let Aisha forget her place. "Why is this place still dirty?" Mrs. Adeyemi barked one afternoon, standing in the grand kitchen with its marble countertops. She pointed accusingly at a tiny speck of dust on the floor. Aisha scrambled to clean it, knowing well that any delay could mean not only verbal abuse but also the possibility of a beating. "Do you even know how to do anything right? You filthy girl!" Mrs. Adeyemi snapped before walking off, her heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor. Aisha fought back tears. It wasn't just the abuse that hurt her, it was the mystery of her past. Who was her father really? And why had her mother, on her sickbed, once told her that there was more to her story than she knew? As Aisha was cleaning the guest rooms, news spread that the Adeyemi's only son, David, was returning from abroad. David had been studying in the UK for years, and his return was a major event in the household. There was talk of him taking over the family business once his father retired. Aisha, like the other maids, had heard rumors of David's charm, intelligence, and good looks. But unlike the others, she was not looking forward to his return. In her experience, the Adeyemis treated people like her with contempt, and she expected David would be no different. When David finally arrived, Aisha kept her head down, as instructed. But from the corner of her eye, she noticed how different he seemed from the rest of his family. He was polite to the staff, even thanking them for their services. He wasn't loud or rude like his mother, nor did he have the coldness of his father. Still, Aisha remained cautious. She had learned long ago that kindness from the wealthy was often a mask, hiding darker intentions. Over the next few weeks, David's presence in the house changed things. He noticed Aisha one evening as she was struggling with a large pile of laundry. "Do you need help?" he asked, startling her. No, sir," Aisha replied quickly, her eyes cast downward. She had been warned by the other maids to avoid any unnecessary interactions with David. "You don't have to be afraid," David said softly, sensing her unease. "I'm not like my parents." Despite her better judgment, Aisha found herself speaking to him more often in the following days. They had short, casual conversations whenever they crossed paths, though she always maintained a respectful distance. David, on the other hand, was curious about her. There was something about Aisha that intrigued him, something he couldn't quite place. "I feel like I've met you before," he said one afternoon while they were both in the garden. "But I can't figure out where." Aisha froze. She couldn't imagine how that could be possible, but his words sent a shiver down her spine. Aisha had long stopped asking questions about her past. Her mother, who had passed away a year ago, had left her with too many unanswered questions. But as David continued to take an interest in her, she began to wonder if there was more to her connection with the Adiemis than she realized. One night, while cleaning Chief Adiemi's office, she came across an old family photograph tucked away in a drawer. The image was of a younger Chief Adiemi standing next to a woman Aisha didn't recognize. But what shocked her the most was the child in the woman's arms, a baby girl who looked eerily like Aisha. Her heart raced as she quickly put the photograph back. Could it be that she had some connection to the Adiemi family? But how? And why had she never been told? Unable to shake the feeling that something was being kept from her, Aisha began to pay closer attention to the conversations around her. One evening, while serving dinner, she overheard Chief Adiemi and Mrs. Adiemi arguing in hushed tones. "I told you we should have never kept her around," Mrs. Adiemi hissed. "And what would you have me do?" "We couldn't just abandon her," Chief Adiemi replied sharply. Aisha's hands trembled as she set down the plates. Were they talking about her? The weight of the unanswered questions pressed down on her, suffocating her. Later that night, as she lay in her small room in the servant quarters, Aisha replayed the conversation in her head. Who was she really? And why would the Adiemis be talking about abandoning her? The next day, Aisha couldn't focus on her work. She decided she couldn't live in uncertainty any longer. Summoning every ounce of courage she had, she approached Chief Adiemi while he was in his study. "Sir, I need to ask you something," she said quietly, her voice shaking. Chief Adiemi looked up from his papers, his expression one of surprise. "What is it, girl?" I found a photograph," Aisha began, hesitating. "And I overheard you talking to Madam last night. I need to know the truth." For a long moment, Chief Adiemi stared at her, his eyes darkening with something that looked like regret. He sighed heavily, leaning back in his chair. "It's time you knew the truth, Aisha." Chief Adiemi revealed that Aisha was not just any maid. She was, in fact, his daughter. Years ago, before he married Mrs. Adiemi, he had been in love with another woman, Aisha's mother. They had a brief but passionate relationship, and Aisha was born as a result. But circumstances had forced him to abandon them, choosing his business and societal status over his first love. Aisha's mother had never told her the full story, likely out of a desire to protect her. But when she fell ill, she had sought help from Chief Adiemi, who had arranged for Aisha to work in his home, hoping to keep her close without revealing her true identity. "You were never supposed to find out," Chief Adiemi said, his voice filled with guilt. "I wanted to protect you, but I failed." Aisha felt numb. She had spent years being treated like trash in the home of the man who was supposed to be her father. The betrayal cut deep. If you are enjoying the story, please don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on the notification button, so you will not miss any of our story. We would like to see in the comment section where you are watching from. Let us continue. The days following the revelation were a blur for Aisha. She didn't know how to process the truth. She avoided David, unsure how to face him after everything she had learned. She wasn't just a maid, she was part of the family he belonged to. David, however, could sense that something was wrong. He finally cornered her one evening and demanded to know why she was avoiding him. When Aisha told him the truth, he was shocked. "You're my sister," he whispered, disbelief coloring his voice. "Yes," Aisha said quietly. "I didn't want to believe it, but it's true." David was silent for a long time, then he shook his head. "This changes everything." The Adiemi household was thrown into chaos once the truth came out. Mrs. Adiemi, furious that her husband had kept such a secret from her, lashed out at everyone, including Aisha. But David stood by his newfound sister, defending her against his mother's wrath. "We can't change what happened in the past," David told Aisha one night. "But we can decide what happens next." Aisha wasn't sure what the future held for her, but she knew one thing: she was done living in the shadows. With David's support, she began to assert herself more within the household, refusing to be treated like a mere servant any longer. In the months that followed, Aisha's life changed dramatically. She was no longer just the maid; they could no longer treat her like trash. She was the daughter of Chief Adeyemi, and she would take her place in the world as such. Chief Adeyemi, racked with guilt, did everything in his power to make amends. He gave Aisha a stake in the family business, ensuring that she would never have to struggle again. But more than that, Aisha found something she had never expected: family. Though it took time, she and David grew close, forming a bond that transcended the secrets and lies of their past. For the first time in her life, Aisha felt like she truly belonged. She had risen from the ashes of her past, stronger and more. Aisha's journey from the shadows to the light was not an easy one. Though her life had begun with hardship, neglect, and secrets, she eventually found the truth about her family and her rightful place in the world. The Adeyemi family, once fractured by lies and hidden truths, began to heal. Chief Adeyemi made every effort to reconcile with his daughter, and David stood firmly by Aisha's side, proving that family ties can be rebuilt through trust and love. The neighborhood, which had once gossiped about the maid who had overstayed her welcome, now whispered in awe of Aisha's strength and resilience. No longer a figure of pity or disdain, she had become a symbol of endurance and dignity, showing everyone that your past doesn't define your future. As Aisha grew into her role within the family and the business, she used her newfound position to uplift others. She established a foundation for underprivileged children, inspired by her own experiences as a maid, giving them opportunities that she had been denied. Despite everything, Aisha never lost her humility. She knew that power and wealth could change people, but she was determined to remain grounded, remembering the pain and struggle that had shaped her.